What is going down? You already know who it is. This is another JPL Productions tutorial, and we're going to show you again some Blender 2.92, I believe, or 2.91, one of the two, I can't remember, whichever one's free on the Blender website. Everything that you see in this video is downloadable for free with the exception of the building. Today, what we're going to work on is importing our vehicle that we made in the last one and wrapped it, as you can see, and we're going to animate it. So, by the time you finish this production tutorial today, this Blender tutorial, you should be able to create a simple scene and animate it. That's going to include wrapping your objects and everything. Okay, so we're going to get straight into this. I have my car scene open. It's not the full scene with the buildings. This is just the car, because what we're going to have to do first is export our car out of here as an object so that we can import it into another file. So what you see me doing here, we're going to get straight into this. We're taking our vehicle here and we're going to basically separate it. Okay, so we're going to blind everything out that isn't the car, so the lights and everything, because what we have to do is we have to take the car and we have to put it in its own collection. So we're going to do a new collection, as you can see, just follow along up here. So once we have the new collection, we're going to drag the car components into that collection. So because whatever collection is viewable is what will be exported whenever you export. So you can see everything is out of there except for the vehicle. So it's the only thing that you can see. Now, you will see here in a bit when we import this object into the other scene that for some reason it brings the floor. I'm not really sure why, because it's not in our collection, nor is it viewable or visible. So I'm not really sure why it does that, but it's as simple as deleting it, so that way it's out of the way. Okay, so once we have all of these things in a collection, we actually, see if you hit the drop down, you can see all of our components here. But what we actually need to do is we need to import all of these into their, or not import, we need to move them into their own collection, okay? So when I say these and them, I'm referring to the car and the wheels because they're all individual objects. So each one needs to be within this collection, and we need each one to be in its own collection. So the wheels need to be in their own collection inside of this main collection. Now, if somebody watches this and they see something different or that they know how to do in a different way, then let me know. What I've found is that if I don't do it this way, when I import this object into the other scene, I won't be able to manipulate them as their own individual objects. So they're all going to share the same center point, and that's not going to work for when it comes to like rotating the wheels or turning or anything. So we're going to keep this pretty simple. We've got each one of these wheels in their own collection. So now everything's good to go here. And you can see when you click on each object, they all have their own center point, and that's to be expected in this file. So now we've got everything blinded except for what we need here, and we're going to export this as an object. So each wheel is in its own collection, and then all of them are inside of a main collection. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're parenting these objects to the main car. So we parented those wheels to this car, which honestly, what I found when I did this, and if you know better, then please let me know, but what I found is that I still have to parent them in the other file anyway. But anyway, so what we're doing here is we're going to file, export as a wavefront. That's what we just did a minute ago. So we're going to do file, export as a wavefront object. Now we're going to change to our scene, because once you've saved that where you want it, that's it. It's ready to import into something else. So now we're opening up our scene here. This is our city scene, same one that you saw at the introduction at the beginning, and that we've been working on for this entire set of tutorials, which this is, by the way, the last one. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to import that object. We're going to go to File and then Import here in a second. But what you'll see is that when we import it, it imports the object into the main collection. So it does not import the object as a new collection. It just imports it almost like it's an object, but it's not. It's actually a collection. So as you can see, when I imported this here, the size is huge and the floor is there for some reason. So we just delete the floor, and now we're going to select the pieces, the components. So you've got 4 cylinders there, and then this plane, which it says plane, but it's not really a plane. As you can see, it's the car. We're going to take those and we're going to go ahead and size them down how we want after we move them into a collection. So as you saw, I just created a collection, and I'm moving really swiftly here because this shouldn't take very long to be able to do once you're at this point. So I made a new collection, and then I dropped in the main part of the car, the body of the car, into that collection. So what's going to happen here in a second is first we're going to hide some of these buildings so that we can actually see better what we're working on because they're kind of in the way. And we're going to take the car, the body, and we're going to take the wheels, and we're actually going to move them all into the same collection in a second. Let's click this one and hide it, and we're going to select all these wheels and shrink this down. So we're just scaling this down, you know, S to scale, and we're going to rotate it here in a second, but first we're going to make sure our size is good. Looks good. It looks pretty close to right. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our collection here, and you see this is the car, but this isn't any of the wheels. So we need to put the wheels in here with this. So I'm just looking to see what's in here. Each one of these cylinders, so you can blind it out and see which part you're looking for. Each one of these needs to go in there as well. So we're going to make a new collection, and we're going to make 4 of these because we still need one for each wheel. And you know, honestly, I don't really understand why this seems to work like this. And when I imported it differently, like all as one thing, it gave it all, it acted like it was one object, yet they were separated, so you could still manipulate them, yet they all refer to the same center point. So doing it this way, I found pretty much eliminates whatever problem. So we're going to, each one of those collections we made there, we're going to drop one of those wheels in there off of that list at the bottom where we had the circle. And so you see what we've got set up there. So we've got a main collection for the car and then 4 individual collections for each wheel. So all of that plus the bodies inside the main collection. So the next thing we're actually going to do in a minute, first we're going to change this. This is it's kind of frustrating, you know, moving around and not having that 3D cursor where we want it so that we can move around and look how we want. So we've just set it to follow this object, or the 3D cursors, the camera. So that way it rotates around this car. So now what we're doing is we're going to parent all of these, but first we're going to rotate it in the direction that we need. So we're just going to select all of it, scale it a little bit, it's still a little bit big, and then we're going to hit R to rotate and then Z, but hold on, let's select these again, click it, and then we're going to parent the wheels to the object. So we select the wheels first, then we select the car body, then we parent. Now we're going to just select the parent, rotate, hit R, and then 180 degrees, and that flips it the other direction. So now it's facing towards the corner of the street where the camera is positioned at, which is the direction we really want this to go. So now you see whenever I click on the rendered view, we can't see anything. Nothing comes up. You need to click on the, well, not sure what my mic is doing here. You need to click on the, not the render tab. Anyway, so click here on this tab, the little camera, and then go to performance and then click high quality normals, and that should bring everything into view. I don't know why I went blank on the tab I'm in right now, but you see it. So that's the beauty of video, is that you can see what I'm clicking on. So now you see we have our vehicle inside the scene, and we've got some buildings missing, of course, that we need to put, but we'll unhide those towards the end. So we're going to keep this like this, and we're just going to keep this animation extremely simple. Okay, all we're doing is having this thing drive up the street. Now first we're going to select the car, because when we select the car it selects the wheels because it's parented, and we're going to lower it to the top of the street. It was a little bit above it, so you know we want to make sure that it's kind of touching it a little bit. and we're going to line it up in the lane that we need. And you can do this part however you choose. This is just me doing this for sake of the animation. So now I've moved the car. Now you see I'm at the very beginning frame on the timeline, and I'm moving the car to the position I want the car to start in. Okay? So now what I do is I hit I, and then I hit location, scale, rotation. Okay? Because that inserts a keyframe. Now, in order to do that, you need to have the mouse cursor in the window with the objects. If you're at the timeline, it's not going to do it right. So now I'm zooming out and I'm moving back, and I'm going to position myself so I can see where I'm moving this thing to. So now I've got it selected, and I move my keyframe, I move my cursor on the timeline all the way to the last frame, because now I'm going to insert another keyframe, hit I, lock, scale, rotation. And now you see with the two keyframes, this actually is already animated. So now, because of the other cameras and things like that I have in here, it won't show it if I hit 0. It's going to show whatever the active camera is, which I'll show you that here in a second too. But what you do see is that the car actually moves already in the direction we want it to go. The wheels don't rotate because we have to rotate those. So it's as simple as doing this. You select the wheel, okay? Now go to the first keyframe, select the wheel, go to your axis of rotation, whatever it may be for the object you're doing. In my case, this is the x-axis for this wheel. And then on that first keyframe, I let it start at 0 or whatever it was already set at. I set a keyframe. And on the last keyframe, I'm going to go over here, and I've still got the wheel selected, not the car, the wheel. And I'm going to insert a keyframe for that x-axis rotation. So you could see how this is. Nothing's changed about it. So I'm going to go to, not location, but rotation. And I'm going to, you can pick whatever number you want here for this. But in this case, I think I can't remember exactly what I picked. So anyway, you'll see here in a second though. So now I'm going to rotate this wheel. Let me go to rotation, and then I'm going to type in my number. I can't remember what it is, but 200 and something. Basically what you're doing is you're selecting a degree that you want it to rotate. So if you did 360 degrees, that's going to rotate that wheel one time. Now you need this to continue to roll or appear to roll for the length of the animation. Now when you watch the animation, as you can see, we picked a number. Now with your mouse above that X, if you hit I and then hit enter, it will automatically keyframe that for you. Okay, so that panel that you see with the green lines there, they're green because there's a keyframe. So if you were to go to the first, now what we're doing here is we're literally copying and pasting keyframes. So I'm going to select this wheel. I'm going to bring my mouse cursor. No, we're just going to go ahead and type it. I think that's just the easier way to do it. So we're typing our number, hit enter, and that changes our rotation. We're going to hit I. So now you see that it's got that I there, or that yellow there, and that was because that wheel didn't have an initial keyframe at the front. So now it's set. So it should be good to go. Now you see it turns green. So now you see the wheel, it appears to be rolling. The issue here is that now I don't personally know if there's a physics attribute you can apply to this somehow. There probably is with how sophisticated these things are, but we're going to copy and paste this in a manual way like we're doing to, or we're just going to do it for each wheel so that way it rolls how we need it to roll, or appears to be anyway. I'm sure there's a physics setting you can apply somehow that would add the rotation based on physics settings in there. I don't know. If there is one, let me know. But we're doing this the easy way. We're just selecting our degrees, and then we're hitting or inserting keyframes. So you can see these wheels have a start keyframe and an end keyframe, and what they have set is their rotation. Okay, so it's really simple. You have a keyframe where you start at, a keyframe where you end at. You have and in those keyframes, you have the actions or positions that you want these things to be set for. So by the time ours gets to the end here, all of our wheels will appear to have rolled. What they won't necessarily look like, though, you would have to determine the rate you need it to roll at for it to look realistic and natural. So we're keeping this super simple because this is a super simple animation just to get you started with animating and understanding the concepts of keyframes and you know, the other simple things. But it's really straightforward. Like, we're pretty much done with this. Now I'm unhiding everything, and you see we got some other objects here, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. And but I unhid all the buildings so we can see what this looks like, and we're going to hit 0. Now this is what our camera is looking like so far. We're seeing it. We'll zoom out here so you can see that frame. And in the background back there, you can see the car slowly coming towards us. And there it goes. Now I didn't add brake lights or headlights to this, which would have added a little bit more realism to it, even though it's not necessarily intended to look real. But you know, that's the things I'm going to leave for you to figure out and do those things on your own. If you do want me to make a tutorial where I add headlights and brake lights to the car and show you how to do it, let me know in the comments below, and I'm happy to do that. Make sure, if you guys think that this animation is a simple and easy thing to learn from, make sure you hit that like button, and also smash that subscribe button so that way you can be notified whenever we post a new video for the new tutorials. This is the last tutorial of this series. This is our City Pack 1 series. Very simple, you know, easy stuff to do. If you've been following along with the tutorials, then by the time you get here, then you'll completely understand. So now what I'm doing is I'm adding a camera in here that follows the car. So, and we're going to add more than one because we're going to have a couple of shots in here to make this work the way that we want, for the views that we want. So we've added a camera, as you can see, and I've moved the camera and I've positioned it. You should already know how to do that by now, just G and then whatever axis you're trying to move on for the simplest way. And I've just moved this thing forward. So now what I'm going to do is different points in my animation. If you look at my timeline, at the bottom, you see that there are different cameras there, right? And each one is labeled how it's labeled. And what that implies is the point that that little camera comes up is when the camera will switch to that camera. So in order to do that, it's super easy. What you do is you add a camera in, and then you animate it however you're going to animate it if you're going to, or just position it. And then on your timeline, now I'm positioning my camera here for this shot, and then I'm going to add some animation to it. So the same way that we animated that car is the same way that we would animate the camera. So it's position, rotation, whatever. And you can actually also animate other aspects of it, like the zoom level and all kinds of different things, but you'll have to mess around with that stuff later. And we are going to do another tutorial on that later on. That's actually going to be one of the coming up tutorials that you'll be able to find on our website or, you know, here on our YouTube channel. So I'm just finding the positions that I want to place this camera and the time that I want it to move along with the rotations. And then the same thing when I have the mouse in the window where all of the objects are at. If you hit I when your camera is selected, it will add that keyframe. So now one thing you need to remember is that if you move an object or camera and you didn't set the keyframe, when you move on the timeline, it will not leave that position set. So when you move something and you know it's going to be animated how you want it, make sure to set your keyframe. And you can't just be on a keyframe and change the position and think it's set. You have to actually set the keyframe. So if you don't hit I and then set that keyframe, it will revert back to whatever it was prior to you making the adjustment. So don't forget to set your keyframe. So what you see there is our camera took that shot how we wanted it to. So we've placed that camera in there and with those keyframes, and if you look at the timeline down here where the mouse is at, then you can see that this camera activates or becomes active at this point between the other two cameras that were already there. So as it's coming up, you'll see, boom. Now, in order to get your camera to become an active camera, and I'll explain this further in the camera tutorial that's coming up, but in order to do that, you need to hit Control B with your mouse down there in the timeline window. So if you're up in the other window, it won't do it. But Control B will add that camera Basically, I'm going to call it a camera switch. I don't really know how it's referred to be honest. But Control B adds that camera break is what I'm going to call it. We're going to call it a break into the other camera, I suppose. That sounds good to me anyway. If you got something better to call it, let me know. But what you see though is we've got this camera here. Everything's good to go. Bada bing, bada boom. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe we add another camera towards the end of this just to make sure that we have enough views on the object. So as you can see, really simple, really straightforward, and just by adding a few cameras and this simple motion, it gives life to the scene. So we've got nothing but a bunch of, like stagnant objects here. They're just objects sitting still, and all of the motion is done with the camera and now with the car with the wheels. So as you saw, those wheels were rotating at the same rate, same pace, because we put the same numbers. So, and they take the same amount of keyframes. If you shorten the keyframe length, like lessen the length, so there's less frames it takes to get from one keyframe to the other, then what will happen is they'll start to appear to roll faster than the others because they have less time to accomplish the same amount of rotations. Okay, so make sure that if you have something like wheels that work together at the same rate, that you have the same amount of keyframes, unless it's something deliberate, of course, that you're doing. But make sure you don't have different keyframes or they won't appear to roll the same way. And you don't want that. So today's tutorial has been really simple, really straightforward. Now we're just adding cameras and just making this thing a little bit more creative. But the whole thing is actually really simple. I'm adding some more cameras in here for the end, and then just messing with the position and the rotation and whatnot. But everything that you needed to learn in this tutorial has already been said. So kind of a recap: export an object from the working file that it's in. You want to have your collections where the thing that's being exported is the only thing visible in that collection, and it needs to be in its own collection because otherwise every object in the collection will be exported. So once you have the collections arranged how you need, then you go to File, Export, Wavefront Object, and then do that and then save it. And then you'll open your other document that you're going to import that object into, and then you'll go to File, Import, Wavefront Object, and you'll find your object and import it. Scale it as you need to. If you imported like we did here, where we had 5 objects altogether, 4 wheels and a car body, then you would need to, for the sake of safety, at least the way we went in this tutorial, and to the best of my understanding, we made a new collection for that vehicle, and then we put the body in there. Then within that collection, we created 4 more collections, 1 collection for each wheel, and we put it in its own deal. Then we parent those objects, those wheel objects, to the car body, and all of it's one deal. And then you can animate it. To animate, you're going to have your start frame, which is whichever frame you pick first, and then your end frame, which would be your last frame. When you make your start frame, you move the cursor on the timeline, so you need your timeline visible. Move the cursor on the timeline to your start. Move your mouse to the window with the objects, and then hit I. And then typically I select location, rotation, scale, because those are the 3 things you really want to cover whenever you're making a keyframe. That pretty much covers all of the movement for whatever kind of object and the most typical ways of manipulating it. Then you would do the same thing for your last keyframe or your next keyframe, because you can do a series of them. You would go to whatever frame, then you would change the position of the object. Make sure you change that frame first. Change the position of the object after you change the frame that you are on. Then once that position is changed, hit I to insert the keyframe, and then bada bing, bada boom, you've got something animated. And then you do the same thing with the cameras. So you can see we're playing around with the cameras here. We've got this wide angle lens on here so we can get a cool, dramatic look of this. And you see that that camera is a little close to the vehicle, so we really need to move it because you can start to see inside of it. What that means is that the camera is actually overlapping that object. So we're going to move this back a little bit. We can still see that it's overlapping there. So in a second we'll deal with the rotation because I wanted a strong angle on that. And then I'll change the position. You can hear my phone in the background going off. That's people saying, can you make us some more tutorials in Blender? because we really like how you make them. So I'm going to do that for them. But anyway, I'm just playing though. But I will do that. Let me know what you guys want me to make also. So you can see as I started to make the motion here, I could see that it was still inside of the car. So we needed to back it up a little bit on its first keyframe. And you see I'm making a change here, but I'm adding the keyframe again. So I had to hit I and then location, rotation, scale. If you don't do that, it's not going to keep the changes you made. And you see that short little movement? And that little movement adds something pretty dramatic. So now let's watch the whole thing. Here comes the car. Slowly but surely, looks good, nice pace. Rolling, rolling with the dubs on it. Maybe it's not dubs, maybe they're like 17s or 18s or something. I don't know, but they look pretty good though. Yeah, if you guys want me to make a tutorial to show you how to do the headlights and show you how to do the tail lights and make them where they can be animated, just let me know and I'll be happy to do that. The next tutorial is going to be a camera movement tutorial and lighting. And I want to say thank you guys for watching. It's been a good tutorial. It was really short and sweet. Hopefully it covered all the things you need to get started in animating. Make sure you guys check us out at thejplproductions.com and /production-tutorials to find all of our tutorials there. And we're also working on getting some more done. Plus we have free downloadable objects at the website. Everything you see here is downloadable for free with the exception of the buildings. So feel free to stop in and check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Hit that like button and share button and smash the subscribe, baby. Thank you guys for watching. You can find us again in the next one. We'll see you soon.